It was the sort of Tuesday that made Marvin wish for an asteroid impact. Alas, the only cataclysmic event was the one unfolding on his desk as he stared at the flickering holographic map, which now showed a gaping void where Earth was supposed to be. The blinking red letters, "Error. Planet not found," taunted him like a misbehaving child. "Well, that's inconvenient," Marvin muttered, tapping the display as if a good thump would bring his home planet back into existence. Beside him, Dr. Beatrix B. O'Donnell was busy using her multi-tool to fix the coffee machine, which had decided to join the rebellion against human technology. "Did you say something, Marv?" she asked, her voice muffled as her head was stuck halfway inside the contraption. "Oh, nothing, just that Earth has vanished," Marvin replied nonchalantly, as if discussing the weather. Bee twisted her head to look at him, her eyes wide. "Vanished? Like, gone?" "Poof," Marvin exclaimed, making an exaggerated gesture with his hands. "Like a magician's rabbit, but less fluffy." "Well, that's one way to handle traffic congestion," Bee said, her dry humor unruffled by the interstellar calamity. She yanked her head out of the coffee machine and joined Marvin, peering at the empty spot with casual intrigue. "Think it's a glitch?" she asked. "Or maybe the aliens finally got tired of our reality TV?" Marvin shrugged. "Could be, but until we can confirm anything, I'm going to suggest we keep this between us. Last thing we need is mass panic on Luna Major." As if on cue, the floor shuddered beneath them, followed by a distant explosion. Marvin and Bee exchanged a glance, their expressions a mix of concern and resignation. "Sounds like the rebellion's heating up," Marvin said, standing up and grabbing his jacket. "And here I was hoping for a quiet day." They hurried out of the lab and into the corridor, joining the throngs of humans rushing towards the nearest escape pods. Outside the reinforced glass windows, the sky was a surreal tapestry of laser fire and smoke trails, painting vivid streaks across the artificially oxygenated atmosphere. "Look on the bright side," Bee said as they jogged down the corridor. "At least we don't have to worry about Earth taxes anymore." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from ahead, and a squad of alien enforcers burst through the ceiling, landing with the grace of a refrigerator dropped from a moving van. "Surrender, humans," barked the lead alien, a towering figure with too many limbs and an unfortunate resemblance to a squid wearing armor. Marvin raised his hands, though more out of habit than compliance. "Surrender? To you guys? With all due respect, you couldn't even delete our planet from your maps without tripping over your own tentacles." The alien hesitated, its eyes narrowing as it processed Marvin's words, and Bee took the chance to discreetly activate her multi-tool. "Listen," Marvin continued, "we've got a coffee machine in revolt, our home planet's playing hide and seek, and now a bunch of cephalopods are trying to take over our moon. Do you really think this is going to end well for you?" The alien hesitated, perhaps realizing, albeit too late, the extent of human obstinacy. The sound of Bee's multi-tool whirring grew louder, and then, with a sudden burst of energy, the ceiling above them collapsed, burying the alien squad in a pile of steel beams. Marvin and Bee exchanged a satisfied nod. "Well," Bee said, dusting off her hands, "that's one problem sorted. Now, about Earth." Before Marvin could reply, the intercom crackled to life, a panicked voice blaring, "Attention all units. The alien fleet has activated their anti-planetary device. Repeat, anti-planetary device." "Oh, fantastic," Marvin groaned. "Because that's exactly what we need. An intergalactic HFY sketch." The two shared a grim smile as they raced down the corridor, determination and a hint of lunacy driving them forward. Somewhere out there, Earth might be lost, but if the aliens thought they could erase humanity's tenacity, they'd have another thing coming. Outside the dusty ruins of what once was a bustling metropolis, the air shimmered in the haze of a perpetually setting sun. The only sound was the persistent crunch of gravel underfoot as a ragtag group of survivors trudged toward their destination, the legendary safe zone, rumored to have running water, edible food, and Wi-Fi. Leading the group was Frank, a former office manager turned reluctant leader. His once pristine suit was now a patchwork of duct tape and questionable stains. He carried a golf club strapped to his back. It had been his boss's, and Frank figured that if it couldn't inspire fear, it might at least get a few laughs. Behind him, Lucy, a tech-savvy teenager whose hobbies included hacking into abandoned satellites, walked with her eyes glued to a handheld device that beeped erratically. "I've almost got a signal," she muttered for the 100th time. Her backpack, bulging with wires and defunct gadgets, seemed to weigh more than she did. To Frank's left, Bob, a former barista with a penchant for latte art and survivalist instincts, was busy balancing a stack of scavenged coffee beans in his shirt while trying to convince the group that good coffee wasn't just a luxury, it was a necessity. His beard, now more feral than fashionable, twitched with every step. "Frank," Bob said, breaking the silence, "if we don't find a water source soon, I'm going to have to start brewing with, you know." He gestured vaguely to a puddle that looked more like oily soup than anything potable. Frank grimaced. "We're not there yet, Bob. Hold on to your beans." The group continued their march, unaware that they were being watched from the shadows of an overturned billboard. A pair of glowing eyes tracked their movements, followed by a low growl. The creature, a mutated hybrid of former wildlife and something else entirely, licked its lips. Dinner was served. Meanwhile, Lucy's device beeped loudly, startling everyone. "Got it," she exclaimed. "A signal from the safe zone. It's, not as close as I'd hoped." Frank tried to sound optimistic. "How far?" Lucy squinted at the screen. "Well, if we keep up this pace, we should reach it before the next major extinction event." "Comforting," Bob muttered, adjusting his beanbag. Frank sighed, remembering a time when his biggest worry was missing a deadline for TPS reports. Now, it was surviving mutated creatures and finding potable water. "Let's pick up the pace, people." As they moved on, the glowing eyes watched, calculating its approach. The creature was not only hungry but smart, a dangerous combination in any world. The survivors soon found themselves at the edge of what appeared to be an abandoned strip mall. The crumbling facade of Megamart loomed over them, a monument to consumerism reduced to ruins. Frank motioned for the group to stop. "Okay, game plan," he said. "We go in, grab supplies, and get out fast. Stick together, and no wandering off." Lucy nodded, fingers tapping away at her device. "I'll check for any security systems still active." Frank turned to Bob, who was already eyeing the remnants of a coffee shop inside the mall. "And you, keep an eye out for anything we can use." "On it," Bob replied, already imagining the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. They entered cautiously, the air inside heavy with dust and nostalgia. Once vibrant displays were now skeletal racks, their wares looted long ago. The sound of distant dripping water echoed through the halls. Lucy led the way, her device acting as a makeshift compass. "Signal's getting stronger," she said, weaving through the debris. "We might actually—" Her words were cut off by a sudden crash. A heap of metal and plastic cascaded down from a high shelf, narrowly missing Frank. "Sorry," Bob called sheepishly from behind a tattered sale banner. "Tripped over I'm not sure what it was, actually." Frank rolled his eyes but couldn't suppress a chuckle. "Just be careful, all right?" As they ventured deeper, the group remained oblivious to the creature that had followed them inside, its eyes glowing with predatory intent. Suddenly, Lucy stopped, holding up a hand. "Wait, do you hear that?" Frank strained his ears. Over the background noise, a faint humming noise emerged, growing louder. It was coming from a door labeled, "Staff Only." "Could be a generator," Bob suggested, hopeful. "Or something worse," Frank cautioned. He approached the door, gripping the handle of his golf club. "Stay behind me." With a deep breath, Frank pushed the door open, revealing a small, dimly lit room. In the center, a lone figure tinkered with a console, oblivious to their presence. The figure turned, startled. It was a man, dressed in a lab coat several sizes too big. His glasses were cracked, and his hair stood in wild tufts. "Who are you?" Frank demanded, brandishing his golf club. The man blinked, unfazed. "I'm Dr. Marvin, and unless you're here to help me fix this, I'd appreciate it if you left quietly." Frank lowered his makeshift weapon, sensing no immediate threat. "Fix what?" "The transmitter," Dr. Marvin replied, pointing to the console. "It's our only link to the safe zone. If I can boost the signal, we'll have a direct line." Lucy perked up, her curiosity piqued. "What do you need?" Dr. Marvin scratched his head. "A few capacitors, some wiring. Oh, and a power source that won't explode." Lucy nodded, already rummaging through her backpack. "I've got some parts here. Let me see." As Lucy and Dr. Marvin busied themselves with the console, Frank and Bob kept watch. The humming noise continued, intermittently interrupted by the sound of clattering metal as Lucy tossed aside unusable parts. "Tell me, Doctor," Frank said, trying to make conversation, "how did you end up here?" Marvin chuckled ruefully. "I was part of a research team studying the mutations. When things went south, I stayed behind to keep the transmitter operational. Didn't expect company, though." Frank half smiled. "We weren't exactly planning a visit. Just trying to survive." Bob, unable to resist, sidled up to Marvin. "Any chance you've got a coffee maker around here?" Marvin raised an eyebrow. "Coffee? In this apocalypse?" Bob's eyes twinkled with a mix of desperation and hope. "I'm a man of priorities." The doctor chuckled. "Sorry, friend, just some stale energy bars." While Marvin and Bob discussed the merits of synthetic caffeine, the creature, drawn by the noise and scent of the newcomers, crept closer. It peered through the door's crack, eyes narrowing as it calculated its next move. Inside, Lucy connected the final wire, and the console hummed to life. "Got it," she exclaimed, stepping back. The room was suddenly bathed in the soft glow of lights blinking to life. The console's screen flickered, displaying a map dotted with signals. "Impressive," Dr. Marvin nodded, adjusting his glasses. "With this, we might just..." His words were cut off by a feral growl. The group turned to see the creature, now fully emerged from the shadows, its matted fur bristling. "Of course," Frank muttered, raising his golf club. "Because why would today be easy?" The creature lunged, and chaos erupted. Frank swung his club with a surprising amount of finesse, considering his last golf lesson was a decade ago and involved more cocktails than coaching. Lucy ducked behind the console, her nimble fingers already tapping at her device. "If I can just..." Bob, never one to miss an opportunity to improvise, hurled a handful of coffee beans at the creature. They scattered harmlessly, but the creature hesitated, confused by the unexpected projectile. "Really, Bob?" Frank shouted, sidestepping another lunge. "Beans?" Bob shrugged, grabbing a nearby chair leg. "I'm improvising." The creature, momentarily distracted, refocused its attention on Dr. Marvin, who was trying to inch toward a shelf of makeshift weapons. "Not today, Fluffy," Frank grunted, swinging his club and connecting with the creature's side. The impact sent it skidding across the floor, but it quickly recovered, eyes glowing with renewed fury. Lucy, never one to back down from a challenge, typed furiously on her device. Almost there. Suddenly, the console burst with a high-pitched alarm, filling the room with sound. The creature recoiled, disoriented by the noise. "Nice work, Lucy," Frank called, taking advantage of the distraction to guide the group toward the exit. "Let's move." As they bolted out of the room, the creature shook off its confusion and pursued, its frustration evident in every snarled breath. The group raced through the mall's corridors, adrenaline propelling them forward. Frank led the way, instincts honed by countless office fire drills. "What's the plan?" Bob shouted, trying to keep pace. "Get outside," Frank replied, glancing over his shoulder, "and hope it doesn't follow." They burst through the exit, into the blinding light of the setting sun. The creature hesitated at the threshold, its eyes squinting against the glare. Dr. Marvin, panting, leaned against a rusting support beam. "It won't follow us into the open. It's nocturnal," Frank nodded, relieved. Good. We need to. A distant explosion interrupted him, reverberating through the air. The group turned to see a plume of smoke rising in the direction of their intended safe zone. That can't be good, Bob muttered, stating the obvious. Lucy checked her device, which was now flashing with warnings. The signal's gone. Something's happened. Frank's heart sank. The safe zone, their last hope, was in jeopardy. We need to get there, fast. Dr. Marvin adjusted his glasses, determination in his gaze. There's a shortcut, through the old subway tunnels. Frank hesitated, the weight of leadership heavy on his shoulders. It's risky. Everything's risky, Marvin replied. But it's our best shot. Frank looked at his companions, each one nodding in silent agreement. They had come too far to turn back now. All right, Frank said, resolve steeling his voice. To the tunnels. The group set off, the shadow of uncertainty looming over them. The creature watched them go, its hunger unsated, but its cunning mind already plotting another approach. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the survivors descended into the darkness of the subway tunnels, unaware of the new challenges awaiting them. The path to the safe zone was fraught with danger, and their journey was far from over. In the depths, where the light of day dared not venture, the stakes had never been higher. And as they pressed on, the echoes of their footsteps mingled with the growing symphony of threats lurking in the shadows. The holographic map of the known universe shimmered in the dimly lit room as Ambassador Grizzlefrack, a Zerman with tentacles resembling a bouquet of squids, rubbed his eye stalks in disbelief. Earth, he muttered, a mix of frustration and existential dread echoing in his voice. Where did you go? Beside him, Captain Linda Marsh of the United Human Survivors, US, leaned over, peering at the map with a frown that had become a permanent fixture on her face since discovering Earth's disappearance from every star chart in existence. It's like someone hit Ctrl+Z on the entire planet, she said, her voice tinged with incredulity and a hint of gallows humor. The two stood in the command center of the US flagship, the SS Optimism *, a name that had seemed optimistic, if redundant, when they'd first set out to find what remained of humanity's home. Now, it felt like cosmic irony, a punchline in a joke the universe was having at their expense. Ambassador Grizzlefrack waved a tentacle dismissively. We've scanned every chart from here to the Triangulum Galaxy. Earth should be right there, sandwiched between Venus and Mars, but it's as though the universe has developed a spectacular case of selective amnesia. And I don't know if you've noticed, Captain, but your species seems to be, well, not very popular among the cosmic elite. Oh, I noticed, Linda replied dryly, recalling the less than warm reception they'd received from various alien dignitaries. The moment they'd mentioned Earth, expressions had ranged from confusion to outright disinterest, as if the planet were nothing more than a figment of human imagination. Perhaps someone filed a celestial restraining order, Grizzlefrack suggested, his eye stalks twitching in amusement. Linda chuckled despite herself. It was a brief reprieve from the gnawing anxiety of their current predicament. Maybe we're so good at being the underdogs that the universe decided to up the ante. In the corner of the command room, Brad, the ship's engineer and self-proclaimed master of duct tape, was frantically typing into a console. He had a perpetual look of someone who had just woken up and realized they were late for work. I've rerouted the power from non-essential systems to boost our scanners, he announced. We'll find Earth, or I'll personally eat my weight in space rations. Careful, Brad, Linda warned. Those things are more cardboard than cuisine. He looked up, grinning. Hey, I've been preparing for the apocalypse my whole life. I'm positive I can digest cardboard by now. As the humans and their unlikely alien ally continued their desperate search, the SS Optimism drifted through the void, a lone spark in a galaxy that had seemingly forgotten it. The diplomatic avenues had proved fruitless, and human resources were stretched thin. The crew was exhausted, morale was low, and even the ship's coffee machine had given up, dispensing only a strange brown sludge that tasted of despair and burnt hopes. Linda slumped into her chair, feeling the weight of leadership pressing down on her shoulders. She glanced at Grizzlefrack, who was studying the map with a determination that belied his usual flippancy. They were an odd team, but necessity had forged stranger alliances. She appreciated his tentacled tenacity, even if it sometimes felt like they were the only ones who cared about Earth's disappearance. "Why are you helping us, Grizzlefrack?" Linda asked, genuinely curious. The Zerman ambassador paused, his eye stalks focusing on her. "Because, Captain, I enjoy a good mystery. And this is the greatest one the universe has ever presented. Besides," he added with a shrug, "I've grown fond of your species' absurd tenacity. It's like watching a soap opera, but with more explosions." Before Linda could respond, the ship's alarm blared, a shrill sound that brought everyone to attention. Brad's fingers flew over the console, and his face paled. Captain, we've got company. And it looks like they brought the whole neighborhood." On the main screen, a fleet of alien ships appeared, each bristling with weapons and looking decidedly unfriendly. No banners of peace or welcome were visible, only the cold, unyielding steel of advanced warships. "Well, this just keeps getting better," Linda muttered, her fingers tightening around the armrests. Grizzlefrack studied the approaching ships with a resigned sigh. The Zolan Collective, not known for their hospitality or love of Earthlings, or anyone, for that matter. Linda's mind raced. The Zolan were notorious, their diplomacy defined by the phrase, "peace through superior firepower." Negotiating with them was like trying to argue with a particularly belligerent toaster. "Open a channel," she ordered, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. The screen flickered, and the gaunt, insectoid face of the Zolan commander filled it. Its mandibles clicked in a way that suggested it had recently devoured something, possibly someone, for lunch. "Humans," it hissed, the word filled with disdain. "We were not expecting to see your kind here. We thought you'd all gone extinct." "We're stubborn like that," Linda replied, forcing a smile. "We're just looking for our planet. You wouldn't happen to have seen it, would you? Blue, mostly water. Characteristic smell of nostalgia and misplaced ambitions?" The Zolan commander's eyes narrowed, unimpressed by her humor. "Earth is irrelevant. Your kind should accept its fate." Linda's heart sank. The Zolan weren't going to help them. Worse, they might decide to finish the job the universe had started. For a moment, the situation felt genuinely hopeless. Suddenly, Grizzlefrack tapped her on the shoulder with a tentacle, a mischievous glint in his eye stalks. "Captain, if I may." Linda nodded, too tired to argue. Grizzlefrack turned to the screen, all his eye stalks focused on the Zolan commander. "Commander, did you know that humans have a fantastic array of diseases? Particularly virulent ones?" Linda's eyes widened as she caught on. The Zolan were notoriously paranoid about biological contaminants. The Zolan commander's mandibles clicked nervously. "Diseases? Oh, yes," Grizzlefrack continued smoothly. "And you know what they say. One sneeze, and it's popcorn lung for everyone." The Zolan commander recoiled, and the transmission abruptly cut off. On the main screen, the alien fleet began to pull back, clearly not wanting to test the limits of their immunity. Linda stared at Grizzlefrack, part amazed, part amused. "That was impressive." He waved a tentacle modestly. "Just a little something I picked up from watching too many human movies. It seems your species' penchant for creative storytelling has its uses." The crew let out a collective sigh of relief, the tension in the room dissipating like air from a punctured balloon. But the sense of victory was short-lived. Even with the immediate threat gone, Earth was still missing, and their situation was as dire as ever. "All right, team," Linda said, standing and clapping her hands together. "Back to work. We're not giving up, not yet. We've got a planet to find." Brad saluted with a wrench, his face determined. "I'll keep the engines running, Captain. We're not out of this fight." The crew returned to their stations, a renewed sense of purpose guiding their actions. But as Linda watched them, a new worry gnawed at her. They were outmatched, outgunned, and running out of time. The universe had decided to erase Earth from its memory, But the humans wouldn't go quietly into the cosmic night. In the quiet moments between frantic activity, Linda pondered the true scope of their predicament. It wasn't just Earth that was missing. It was as if the very idea of humanity's birthplace had been plucked from existence. The gravitational pull that had once anchored them was gone, leaving them adrift in an infinite sea of stars. But despite the odds, Linda couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more at play, something beyond the comprehension of even the most advanced species. The universe was vast and mysterious, and if Earth had truly vanished, then perhaps it was up to them to rewrite the star maps, to carve their own place in the cosmos. And maybe, just maybe, that was the potential humanity had always possessed, the ability to adapt, to endure, to find hope in the unlikeliest of places. Even in the face of apparent hopelessness, there was a spark, a flicker of possibility that refused to be snuffed out. As she turned her gaze back to the holographic map, Linda knew one thing for certain. Wherever Earth was, they would find it. And when they did, the universe would have to contend with the reality that humans, against all odds, had survived. The SS Optimism continued its journey, a tiny beacon of determination in an indifferent universe. Its crew resolved to fight for their home, their future, and the right to exist. The horizon was a deep, smoggy orange as Lisa peered through the cracked window of their makeshift shelter, a former bowling alley that had, pre-cataclysm, hosted league games and birthday parties. Now, it was a sanctuary for her and the ragtag team of human survivors affectionately dubbed the Gutterballs. "All right, folks," Lisa declared, addressing her team as they gathered around a rickety table that still bore the faded outline of a pizza stain. "We're running out of food, and the intergalactic cleaners are sweeping this block tomorrow. We need a plan, something truly insane." "Insane is my middle name," chirped Jerry, who had once been a tax accountant but now styled himself the chief officer of shenanigans. "Actually, it's Marvin, but that's not the point. The point," Lisa continued, "is that we need to get past the cleaners' patrols and reach the old Costco. Word is, there's still a cache of canned goods and maybe, just maybe, a functioning vending machine." Lou, the group's self-proclaimed strategic genius, scratched his beard thoughtfully. "We could disguise ourselves as a cleaning crew, slap a couple of mops on our backs, carry a bucket or two, might just fool their sensors." "And if that doesn't work?" asked Sam, the group's techie who had managed to turn a Roomba into a makeshift surveillance drone. "It mostly patrolled the snack aisle, but it was a start." "Then we improvise," Lisa said, trying to sound braver than she felt. She had a knack for rallying the troops, despite the fact that her last motivational speech had inadvertently caused a fire in the shoe rental area. The intergalactic cleaners, a species of alien janitors with a zeal for tidiness, had taken over Earth post-cataclysm, determined to cleanse the messy human civilization. Their methods were thorough, efficient, and utterly devoid of mercy. With their plan, or lack thereof, set, the Gutterballs gathered what supplies they could muster. A couple of flashlights, some duct tape, and an ancient bowling trophy they hoped might serve as a distraction. They suited up in their finest bowling shirts and prepared for the journey. As they exited the alley, Jerry paused, holding up a finger. "Wait, we forgot the most important thing." He dashed back inside and returned with a large, inflatable bowling pin. For luck, the streets were eerily quiet, save for the distant whir of a cleaner patrol pod. The Gutterballs crept along the shadows, their hearts pounding as they approached the Costco. The building loomed like a fortress, its automatic doors long since jammed. Sam fiddled with a device cobbled together from an old Game Boy and a toaster, hoping to hack the door's lock. "Come on, Sam," Lisa urged, glancing over her shoulder. "We don't have all night." "I'm trying," Sam muttered, tongue peeking out in concentration. "This thing is more stubborn than a tax auditor on a Friday." Finally, with a sputter and a dramatic beep, the door slid open. "We're in," Sam exclaimed, a little too loud for comfort. "Great," Lou said. Now we just have to find the goods before the cleaners show up and scrub us out of existence. Inside, the Costco was a desolate landscape of toppled shelves and expired bulk items. The group spread out, each member on the hunt for something edible, wearable, or otherwise useful. Jerry, ever the prankster, emerged from an aisle wearing a sombrero made of tortilla chips. Fiesta, anyone? Lisa was about to retort when a low hum permeated the air. It was the unmistakable sound of a cleaner patrol. Everyone, hide, she hissed. The gutter balls scattered, ducking behind overturned carts and piles of discount toilet paper. The patrol pod, a gleaming orb of metallic menace, hovered into view, its sensors sweeping the room. Lisa's heart thudded in her chest as she watched the POD's searchlight pass over her hiding spot. She clutched the inflatable bowling pin, praying it wouldn't betray her position. Just as the tension became unbearable, Jerry's voice echoed through the store. "Hey, metalheads, over here." Every head turned as Jerry, sombrero still perched absurdly on his head, waved his arms. "Catch me if you can, you chrome-plated janitors." The pod whirred in Jerry's direction, its sensors locking onto him. Jerry took off, leading the pod on a merry chase through the aisles, occasionally pelting it with tortilla chips. "Run!" Lisa shouted, seizing the opportunity. The rest of the gutter balls dashed for the exit, baskets laden with whatever supplies they could grab. Outside, the air was thick with tension as they regrouped. "Where's Jerry?" Sam panted, glancing back at the building. "He's got this," Lou assured, though his voice was tinged with worry. "He's the best at running away." Moments later, Jerry burst through the doors, a trail of angry cleaner drones hot on his heels. "I think I made them mad," he hollered, leaping over a barricade with surprising grace for a man carrying an inflatable bowling pin. The gutter balls sprinted back to their alley, weaving through the debris-strewn streets. The cleaners were relentless, but they were nothing if not predictable. Back at the alley, Sam activated a series of traps they'd set up earlier, makeshift snares and pitfalls that caused the pursuing drones to clatter and crash to the ground. The gutter balls collapsed inside, breathless but triumphant. "We did it," Lisa gasped, holding up a can of soup as if it were the Holy Grail. Dinner is served, but their celebration was short-lived. A transmission crackled over their radio, a garbled message from the Resistance Network. "Attention all units, cleaner forces. Mobilizing near the river. Need backup, coordinates." Lisa's heart sank. The river was a critical supply route for the Resistance, and if the cleaners took control, it would spell disaster for their already tenuous operation. "I guess dinner will have to wait," Lou said grimly, echoing the group's collective dread. The gutter balls were exhausted, hungry, and woefully underprepared, but Lisa knew they couldn't back down. They were human, after all, masters of adapting to the chaos they'd often created themselves. "We'll have to split up," Lisa decided. "Some of us will go and help at the river, the rest will stay and prepare defenses here." As they divvied up tasks, an uneasy silence fell over the group. There was no telling how many cleaners were mobilizing or what their plans entailed. "Hey, cheer up," Jerry said, patting Sam on the back. "We've got tortilla chips and canned soup. We're practically invincible." "Yeah," Sam replied with a weak smile, "until they invent a robot that can open cans." Lisa took a deep breath, trying to muster the resolve that everyone seemed to expect from her. "No matter what happens," she said, looking each of them in the eye, "we stick together. That's what makes us, well, us." With that fragile declaration, they steeled themselves for what lay ahead. The night was far from over, and the challenges were mounting by the minute. As they prepared to venture back out into the fray, Lou paused, staring at the inflatable bowling pin. "You know," he mused, "we never did find out if that thing is actually lucky." "Guess we'll find out soon enough," Jerry said, tucking it under his arm. "And if not, at least it's a great conversation starter." The gutter balls faced the night with a mix of dread and determination. The odds were stacked against them. The cleaners were closing in, and their supplies were meager at best. Yet, somewhere in the heart of the chaos, there was a spark of hope, a stubborn, unyielding refusal to be swept away by the tide. It was distinctly human, and though they couldn't put their finger on it, they knew it was their greatest strength. As they set off, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that this was the darkest hour yet. But if they could just hold on, if they could just keep pushing forward, perhaps they might see the dawn. For now, all they could do was improvise, adapt, and, hopefully, survive. The gutterballs were ready to face whatever the universe threw their way, one comedic misadventure at a time. The skies were a deep shade of bruised purple, a color no self-respecting sky would have worn in the old days. But then again, the old days had a lot going for them, like breathable air, water that didn't glow in the dark, and trees that weren't actively trying to eat you. The world as it had been was gone, replaced with this post-apocalyptic mess where even the cockroaches had unionized for better working conditions. And the humans? Well, they were still here, stubborn as ever, proving that evolution might have been more of a mistake than a miracle. A small band of survivors huddled around a flickering campfire, the flames bravely trying to lick the sky despite the oppressive atmosphere. Their base, humorously referred to as Fort Optimism, was a collection of dilapidated shipping containers, cleverly arranged to form a semblance of a fortress. It was the kind of place that would have made a realtor weep for all the wrong reasons. Leading this ragtag squadron was Captain Maggie, Mad Dog, Malone, a woman whose no-nonsense attitude was only eclipsed by her penchant for inappropriate jokes at the worst possible moments. Her eyes were sharp, like a hawk that had taken a correspondence course in sarcasm. As she surveyed her crew, her mind was already spinning plans to turn their desperate situation into a slightly less desperate one. "All right, team," Maggie began, clapping her hands together as if rallying troops for a bake sale rather than a life-and-death struggle. "We're up against it. The evolved ones think they have us cornered, but we're humans. And if there's one thing we're better at than Netflix marathons, it's coming back from the brink." Beside her, Terrence, a self-proclaimed scientific genius, who had once successfully reprogrammed a toaster to make phone calls, nodded enthusiastically. "We need to think outside the box. Maybe even outside the shipping container we call home." "Right," Maggie agreed, "and we're gonna do it with style." Across the fire, Lily, their scout and resident optimist, squinted through the gloom. "I saw them moving supplies to the old mall. They think they've got us beat, but they're getting careless. I suggest we strike there." "An excellent idea," Terrence said, pushing his glasses up his nose, which was an impressive feat considering he didn't wear glasses. "They'll never see it coming." Maggie grinned, her teeth reflecting the firelight with a slightly menacing glow. "Perfect. We'll hit them where it hurts, right in their consumerism. The evolved ones, those pesky alien invaders who had decided Earth was ripe for the taking, like a ripe avocado that had been left in the sun too long, had proven to be a formidable foe. They were smarter, faster, and annoyingly good at karaoke. But humans had something they didn't: the ability to make a plan so ludicrous, so utterly absurd, that it just might work. As dawn approached, the squad prepared for their mission with a mix of anticipation and the kind of dread that only comes from realizing you've run out of coffee. Maggie pulled out a map that looked like it had been drawn by a drunken cartographer with a grudge against straight lines. "Here's the plan," she said, pointing to a large X marked over the mall. "We sneak in, grab whatever we can, and get out before they realize what's happening. Like a Black Friday sale, but with fewer grandmas and more explosions." "Explosions?" Terrence asked, his eyes lighting up with the kind of excitement usually reserved for pyromaniacs and 8-year-olds. "Of course," Maggie replied. "We'll blow up their supply cache on the way out. A little thank you note for invading our planet." The team gathered their gear, which was a generous term for the assortment of scavenged items they carried. Maggie hefted a rocket launcher made from a repurposed PVC pipe, while Lily checked her crossbow, its arrows tipped with whatever sharp objects she could find. Terrence had a backpack filled with gadgets of dubious reliability, including a modified hairdryer he swore could disable alien tech. In the distance, the mall loomed like a monument to humanity's misplaced priorities. Once a hub of commercial activity, it now served as a storage depot for the evolved ones, who had yet to grasp the concept of clearance sales. The journey to the mall was fraught with danger, not least of which was the threat of stepping in a puddle and discovering it was actually a sentient life form. But after a few close calls and one incredibly awkward encounter with a sentient shrub that had taken offense to their passage, they arrived at their destination. "Remember," Maggie whispered, as they crouched behind the remnants of a fountain that had seen better days, "we're here for supplies. But if we can make things go boom on the way out, all the better." The team split up, each member slipping into the shadows with the kind of stealth that would have made a ninja proud, assuming the ninja was having an off day. Inside, the mall was a mix of alien tech and human debris, a testament to what happens when two species with wildly different aesthetic tastes collide. Maggie moved quickly, her eyes scanning for anything useful. She found a stash of alien rations, which looked suspiciously like freeze-dried kale, and stuffed them into her bag. Nearby, Terrence tinkered with an alien terminal, his fingers flying over the controls like a concert pianist who had decided classical music was overrated. "I've got their security system down for a while," he whispered through their makeshift comm links, which were actually just old walkie-talkies that had survived the apocalypse by sheer stubbornness. "Good work, Lily. How's it going on your end?" Maggie asked. "All clear," Lily's voice crackled back. "I've found the mother lode of alien power cells. We'll be able to charge our devices and maybe even run a fan for more than 5 minutes." The team regrouped, their bags bulging with ill-gotten gains. But as they turned to leave, they heard the unmistakable sound of alien footsteps, a sort of squelching noise, like a wet sponge being aggressively stepped on. "Time to make our exit," Maggie said, her voice as calm as if she were suggesting they leave a boring party. "Terrence, you ready with those fireworks?" Terrence grinned, holding up a small device that looked like it had been cobbled together from a dozen unrelated gadgets. "Let's give them a show." As they slipped out of the mall, Terrence activated his device, a series of beeps echoing in the empty corridors. Moments later, the ground shook with a series of explosions, sending debris flying and drawing the attention of every evolved one in the area. The aliens scrambled, their overconfidence shattered as they realized their mistake. Humans, it seemed, were not as defeated as they had thought. In their rush to secure Earth, they had underestimated the sheer audacity of a species that had once put a man on the moon because they were bored on a Tuesday. Back at Fort Optimism, the team celebrated their victory with a feast of alien rations, which tasted like disappointment and old socks. But spirits were high, buoyed by their success and the knowledge that they had struck a blow against their oppressors. Maggie looked around at her crew, her eyes bright with determination. "This is just the beginning. They may think they have us down, but we're not out. We'll keep fighting, keep pushing, and eventually, we'll take back what's ours." The team cheered, raising their makeshift mugs in a toast to their tenacity. Outside, the sky had begun to lighten, the bruised purple giving way to a hopeful pink. It was a new day, one that held the promise of more challenges, more victories, and the ever-present chance of catastrophe. As the sun began to rise over the horizon, painting the world in shades of gold and orange, Maggie knew that the fight was far from over. But now, they had momentum, a chance to turn the tide against their nemesis. Their darkest hour had passed, and though the future remained uncertain, one thing was clear: humanity was not done yet. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Maggie knew that if they could just hold on a little longer, if they could keep up the fight, they might just find a way to win this crazy, messed up war. But first, they had to find more coffee. When the aliens first landed, there was a general consensus among the extraterrestrial community that humans were somewhere between a mildly intelligent species and a group of hyper-evolved squirrels. But the humans had a secret weapon: the internet, or, as it was colloquially known in the galactic community, that thing you should avoid reading before bedtime. At first, the invaders hadn't even bothered to cloak. They hovered casually over major cities, casting lazy shadows and occasionally beaming down messages of impending doom. It was all very theatrical, like an interstellar Shakespeare in the park, if Shakespeare was performed by oversized, multi-tentacled beings with an unfortunate taste for monologuing. General Xyler, commander of the alien fleet, was feeling particularly smug that Tuesday. He sat in his command chair, which was a cross between a throne and a beanbag, and looked out at the earth below. His job was going swimmingly, and he was confident that the species would be subjugated by tea time. "Sir," said Lieutenant Grublerk, his second in command, "we've picked up some unusual transmissions from the humans." "Unusual?" Xyler raised an eyebrow, if you could call a fleshy, purple ridge an eyebrow. "In what way?" "They're memes, sir." "Memes?" Xyler stroked his chin in contemplation. "Ah, yes, primitive Earth humor. Ignore them. We have more important matters to attend to." As it turns out, the humans had other plans. Unbeknownst to the aliens, the humans had a knack for taking the ridiculous and turning it into a strategy. While the aliens were busy analyzing the latest meme trends, a small faction of humans was coming together. Engineers, scientists, and conspiracy theorists alike were huddling in basements, garages, and abandoned pizza shops. In a particularly damp basement, the leader of this unlikely group was Professor Ethel Hargrove. With her frizzy silver hair and penchant for wearing mismatched socks, she was the epitome of mad science chic. As she tinkered with a makeshift device that looked suspiciously like a toaster, her team watched with bated breath. "We need to tap into the one resource the aliens can't comprehend," Ethel declared, her eyes glinting with mischief. "Our absurdity." "Absurdity?" piped up Jim, a former barista turned warrior. "I thought we were going with chaos." "Chaos is fine," Ethel replied, "but absurdity is chaos with a smiley face sticker on it. Now, pass me the wrench." Meanwhile, aboard the alien mothership, Xyler was starting to feel the first twinges of doubt. Reports were coming in of strange human behavior. In one city, a flash mob had broken out, doing the Macarena in perfect synchronization. In another, a group of humans had formed a conga line that stretched for miles. And, most bafflingly, a man in a banana costume was leading an army of pigeons through Central Park. "Sir, the humans are acting erratically," Grublerk reported, looking up from the latest transmission. "Should we be concerned?" "Nonsense," Xyler boomed. "It's merely a distraction, a last-ditch effort to confuse us." "Sir, the Macarena is quite confusing. Focus on the mission." Grublerk. Back on Earth, Professor Hargrove's plan was reaching fruition. The toaster-like device, affectionately named the Absurd Omatich 3000, was ready. It hummed with a peculiar energy, the kind that made your hair stand on end and your socks mysteriously disappear in the laundry. "Is it safe?" Jim asked, eyeing the contraption warily. "As safe as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs," Ethel replied with a grin. "Now, let's give those aliens a taste of true human ingenuity." With a dramatic flair, Ethel flipped the switch. The Absurd Omatich 3000 whirred to life, sending out waves of inexplicable gibberish into the ether. Within minutes, the effects were apparent. On the alien mothership, chaos reigned. The crew found themselves compelled to perform interpretive dance routines, their limbs moving of their own accord. Xyler, still seated in his beanbag throne, watched in horror as his carefully laid plans unraveled. "What is this madness?" he roared, trying unsuccessfully to halt his own legs from executing a flawless pirouette. "The humans, sir," Grublerk managed between a series of involuntary jazz hands, they're winning." "Impossible," Xyler protested as he launched into an impromptu tap dance. "They're just squirrels." But the truth was undeniable. Humans, in all their unpredictable glory, were turning the tide. Across the globe, the absurdity spread. Alien ships found themselves besieged by flash mobs, dance parties, and inexplicably enthusiastic karaoke sessions. The invaders were flummoxed. their superior minds unable to process the sheer illogicality of human behavior. In a last-ditch effort to reclaim control, Xyler attempted to send a message to his superiors, only to find that his communication systems had been overridden by an endless loop of cat videos. Back on Earth, Ethel and her team watched the pandemonium unfold with a mixture of awe and satisfaction. Jim raised a cup of hastily brewed coffee in salute. To absurdity, he declared. To humanity, Ethel corrected with a wink. We're not just squirrels, after all. As the aliens flailed helplessly in the wake of the human counteroffensive, it became clear that the tide had turned. The invaders, once so confident in their superiority, were now on the defensive, struggling to comprehend the species they had so carelessly underestimated. For the first time, Xyler felt a flicker of genuine fear. These humans, with their unpredictable antics and confounding resilience, were far more formidable than he had ever imagined. As the mothership's systems went haywire, a single thought echoed through Xyler's mind. Perhaps it was time to reassess the situation, and perhaps, just perhaps, it was time to retreat. But humans, being humans, weren't about to let them off the hook that easily. The absurd Omadich 3000 was merely the beginning. Ethel and her team, invigorated by their initial success, were already brainstorming their next move. Plans for a synchronized twerking flash mob were in the works, alongside a concept for a world record-breaking simultaneous kazoo concert. Meanwhile, the rest of humanity was catching on. People everywhere were embracing their inner ridiculousness, turning the alien threat into a global festival of eccentricity. Streets were filled with parades of costumed revelers. Rooftops echoed with the sound of impromptu musical performances. Even world leaders joined in, hosting elaborate parties of their own. It wasn't long before a viral video surfaced of an impromptu dance-off between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Canada. The sight of two world leaders gleefully attempting the worm sent ripples of hilarity across the planet. Meanwhile, Xyler was having an existential crisis. His dreams of conquest were crumbling, and his fleet was surrendering to the chaos. In a desperate bid to regain control, he summoned his top strategists. "We must adapt," Xyler declared, his voice tinged with desperation. "We must learn to embrace the absurdity ourselves." His team nodded in agreement, though none of them were entirely sure how to proceed. After all, the closest they'd come to human culture was the contents of a dated encyclopedia entry about disco. As the strategists gathered to discuss their next move, the humans continued their relentless campaign of whimsy. Across cities and towns, people were hosting spontaneous talent shows, forming unlikely alliances, and generally having the time of their lives. The absurd Omadich 3000, meanwhile, continued to broadcast its signal, weaving its magic across the globe. It wasn't long before even the most skeptical of humans were joining in, finding themselves swept up in the spirit of camaraderie. In a small town in the middle of nowhere, a retiree named Edna discovered an unexpected talent for ventriloquism. Soon, she was performing for crowds of delighted onlookers, her puppet, a sock with googly eyes, delivering quippy one-liners that left the aliens in stitches. Elsewhere, a group of teenagers organized an impromptu talent contest, showcasing everything from breakdancing to juggling flaming torches. Their performances were so captivating that even the most stoic of alien operatives couldn't help but tap their feet and hum along. As the days went on, it became clear that humanity had turned the invasion into the ultimate block party. And as the humans reveled in their victory, the aliens were forced to reevaluate their plans. Defeated and demoralized, Xyler finally made the decision to retreat. His once proud fleet, now a ragtag assembly of befuddled extraterrestrials, limped back to their home planet, tails between their metaphorical legs. As the alien ships disappeared into the sky, the humans cheered, their cries of triumph echoing far and wide. The world had been saved not by brute force or cunning strategy, but by the power of laughter, unity, and a healthy dose of nonsense. Ethel and her team watched the retreat from their basement headquarters, their hearts swelling with pride. Jim raised another cup of coffee in a toast, his voice filled with gratitude and admiration. To humanity, he declared once more. To absurdity, Ethel added with a smile. And to the power of the unexpected. And so, the humans continued to dance and sing, their spirits unbroken and their resolve stronger than ever. For they had learned a valuable lesson. That in the face of adversity, sometimes the best weapon is a good sense of humor, and maybe a banana costume or two. As the festivities continued long into the night, a new sense of hope and determination filled the air. Humanity had proven itself to be a force to be reckoned with, and the universe would never underestimate them again. The lesson was clear. Never underestimate a planet full of hyper-evolved squirrels with an internet connection. In the aftermath of the Great Zogonian Invasion of 2045, Earth had become a bit of a mess. Like a disastrous party where everyone forgot to clean up, but with more alien tentacles and less disco ball. The Zogonians, with their 3 heads, 15 eyes, and penchant for eating anything that faintly resembled pizza, had underestimated Earth's tenacity, ingenuity, and love of caffeinated beverages. They had expected a quick takeover, a casual stroll through human history, and perhaps a side of fries. Instead, they got, well, humans. It was in the ruins of New York, standing atop a pile of what was once a hot dog vendor's cart and a small library, that Captain Morgan, never surrender, Jenkins prepared to rally the ragged remnants of humanity. Around him, a mismatched army of survivors stood ready. There were scientists wielding lab equipment, a group of librarians armed with the Dewey Decimal System, and an ex-barista brandishing a cappuccino machine like a futuristic bazooka. "People," Jenkins shouted, the remnants of a tattered American flag fluttering majestically behind him, even though there was no discernible breeze. "Today, we fight not just for survival, but for the right to binge-watch entire seasons in one sitting, to eat junk food without shame, and to declare, just one more chapter, before bedtime." The crowd cheered, a chorus of defiant voices echoing through the shattered cityscape. The librarian contingent, led by the indomitable Mrs. Hargrove, raised their encyclopedias in salute. Jenkins had to admit, he never thought he'd see the day when literacy would be weaponized, but desperate times called for alphabetized measures. "What's the plan, Cap'n?" asked Charlie, a former IT technician who now used his skills to hack into alien tech with nothing more than a paperclip and some chewing gum. "Are we doing the thing?" "Yes, Charlie, we're doing the thing," Jenkins confirmed, a twinkle in his eye. "It's time to unleash Project SASS. Project SASS, Strategic Alliance for Silly Shenanigans, had been humanity's secret weapon. A plan so audaciously ridiculous that no self-respecting alien invader would ever see it coming. The Zogonians, with their superior technology and intergalactic arrogance, had never imagined that Earth's greatest strength lay not in its weapons, but in its capacity for unpredictable absurdity. With a nod from Jenkins, the ragtag group sprang into action. Dr. Felicity Bunsen, a quantum physicist with a penchant for bedazzling lab coats, activated her invention, the quantum disco ball. As it whirred to life, colorful lights danced across the city, temporarily blinding the Zogonian scouts who had been monitoring human movements. Somewhere in the distance, a Zogonian commander squinted all 15 of his eyes in disbelief. "Is that music?" he gurgled, his tentacles twitching in confusion. Indeed, the unmistakable beat of Earth's greatest hits began to emanate from hidden speakers throughout the city, a playlist curated by none other than DJ Blarg, once an alien captive and now humanity's secret weapon in musical warfare. As "Stayin' Alive" blared, the humans moved with newfound energy, their synchronized dance moves both a morale booster and a tactical distraction. Meanwhile, the librarians launched their offensive, deploying a fleet of drones loaded with books. These weren't just any books. They were tomes carefully selected for their sheer weight, size, and ability to cause concussive damage when dropped from 30 feet in the air. The Zogonians, unaccustomed to the concept of literature as a weapon, found themselves bombarded by knowledge they had no interest in absorbing. "Quick, deploy the pamphlets," Mrs. Hargrove commanded, her voice a clarion call to arms. As if summoned by magic, or perhaps just really enthusiastic volunteers, thousands of pamphlets rained down upon the aliens, each one meticulously crafted to convey the many virtues of human culture. From "Why You'll Love Reality TV" to "The Joys of Unexpected Internet Memes," the literature was designed to overwhelm the Zogonians with information overload. Elsewhere, Charlie hacked into the Zogonian mothership systems, his fingers flying over the keyboard with the speed of a caffeinated squirrel. With a triumphant cry, he activated the mothership mirth protocol, a subroutine hidden deep within the alien software architecture. The Zogonians had never suspected that their own systems could be turned against them in a display of comedic brilliance. Suddenly, every screen on the mothership lit up with images of Earth's finest comedians. As stand-up routines and sitcoms played on an endless loop, the aliens were utterly befuddled. What was this strange human ritual of laughter? Why were these Earthlings contorting their faces in such bizarre ways? Commander Glarf, leader of the Zogonian invasion force, watched in mounting horror as his troops succumbed to the onslaught of humor. Their normally stoic expressions began to crack, and soon they were doubled over in fits of laughter, their tentacles unable to maintain their usual deadly precision. This cannot be," Glarf sputtered, his voice tinged with disbelief. "How can they be so ridiculous?" Back on Earth, Jenkins and his team seized the moment. The ex-barista, now known as Java Joe, maneuvered his cappuccino cannon into position. With a mighty heave, he unleashed a caffeinated barrage that coated the alien ranks in frothy espresso. The Zogonians, already disoriented by the barrage of comedy, found themselves slipping and sliding in the aromatic sea of caffeine. "Take that," Java Joe shouted triumphantly. A double shot of freedom, with a splash of justice. In the chaos, Jenkins sprinted toward the alien communications array, a device that looked suspiciously like a giant, glowing pineapple. With a swift kick, learned from years of office chair football, he sent it crashing to the ground, severing the Zogonian link to their home planet. The aliens' cries of distress were drowned out by the triumphant strains of Earth's national anthems blaring from every speaker. At that moment, the Zogonians realized their catastrophic misjudgment. They had underestimated these peculiar bipeds with their penchant for absurdity and passion for unexpected victory. Humanity, with its glorious cocktail of creativity, resilience, and the ability to weaponize caffeine, had turned the tables completely. As the alien forces retreated, Jenkins stood amidst the rubble, the victorious cries of his fellow humans ringing in his ears. He turned to face his eclectic crew, eyes brimming with pride. "We did it," he shouted, his voice barely audible over the jubilant cacophony. The humans cheered, a mix of laughter and relief. They had proven that even in the aftermath of apocalypse, Earth's most powerful asset was its ability to find humor in chaos and turn weakness into strength. Mrs. Hargrove adjusted her glasses, a satisfied smile on her face. "I always knew reading would save the world," she said with a wink. As the sun set over the battle-scarred city, Jenkins and his team gathered around a makeshift campfire. They shared tales of their improbable victory, relishing the sweet taste of triumph. "So, what's next, Cap'n?" Charlie asked, his face illuminated by the flickering flames. Jenkins considered the question, glancing at his motley crew. "Well, first we clean up this mess. Then, we rebuild. And maybe, just maybe, we'll find a way to invite the Zogonians back for pizza. But this time, they'll have to bring their own toppings." Laughter echoed into the night as the humans celebrated their hard-won victory. In the face of overwhelming odds, they had proven that humanity's spirit, and its ability to laugh in the face of danger, was indeed its greatest strength. And so, on that fateful day, Earth was saved not by advanced weaponry or alien technology, but by the indomitable human spirit, a little bit of sass, and an awful lot of caffeine. As the dust settled over the remnants of what was once New York, now referred to as New York, thanks to the handiwork of the rebuilding committee, comprised mostly of imaginative 7-year-olds and their weary yet hopeful parents. Humanity stood triumphant. Well, technically, we slumped triumphantly because standing up straight was too much for our still recovering backs. The alien invaders, known collectively as the bureaucrats, had been soundly defeated after a grueling battle involving paperwork, patience, and an unlikely alliance with humanity's most potent force, the Department of Motor Vehicles. Who could have guessed that alien overlords would be undone by a 17-hour wait time and a misplaced Form 1099-Z? Certainly not them, survivors of the conflict, now proudly calling themselves the Human Resourcefuls, set about rebuilding society with a mix of duct tape, an uncanny ability to repurpose anything, and a whole lot of dad jokes. The city scratched that. The world was abuzz with the chatter of construction and the occasional spontaneous dance party, which had become a staple of the new social order. Dr. Loretta Hargrove, previously a mild-mannered librarian, now the celebrated leader of the resistance and unofficial minister of snacks, found herself at the center of the new world order. Her tactical genius, honed from decades of organizing library book sales and dodging overdue book fines, had turned the tide of battle. Now, she found herself facing a new challenge, selecting the perfect flavor of ice cream to commemorate their victory. After extensive research, one must be thorough in these matters. She settled on a swirl of chocolate and mint, a flavor so universally adored that it would be the first decree of the newly formed Earth Council. Ice cream for breakfast is hereby approved. Not far from Loretta's ice cream deliberations, Charlie, the wrench, O'Malley, former plumber and now head of infrastructure, was busy overseeing the installation of the community's first solar-powered disco ball. What started as a necessity to save energy had quickly transformed into an all-night festival, with Charlie becoming an overnight sensation for his impromptu breakdancing skills. His signature move, the leaky faucet, had become legendary, embodying humanity's ability to adapt and overcome with style and a bit of water spray. Even the former adversaries had found their place in this brave new world. Zogther, previously a mid-level manager in the bureaucrats' hierarchy, now served as the newly minted ambassador of extraterrestrial affairs. After a brief stint in human resource management, a field he excelled at due to his complete lack of empathy, Zogther found his true calling in public relations. His dry alien humor and impeccable ability to navigate complex interstellar treaties mostly involving the safe return of abducted cows had endeared him to the populace. The Scree, a race of sentient flying squirrels who had been caught in the crossfire and were initially just trying to find a good source of nuts, had decided to stick around. They were now integral to the postal service, delivering messages and packages with unprecedented speed and adorable enthusiasm. Their new slogan, "Neither rain, nor sleet, nor lack of a better option," was proudly displayed on every mailbox. With humanity firmly in the driver's seat, though still occasionally asking for directions, a remarkable transformation took hold. The once strife-torn and resource-depleted world was now a hub of innovation and cooperation. Solar farms and wind turbines sprung up like dandelions, powering everything from toasters to teleporters, the latter still a work in progress, as the occasional teleportation mishap could lead to spontaneous appearances in dog parks, much to the delight of local canines. Meanwhile, Ted, the former IT specialist who had accidentally become the face of the resistance through a viral video involving a malfunctioning coffee machine, had found his niche in motivational speaking. His seminars, titled "Turning Glitches into Glory," were sold out months in advance. Ted's uncanny ability to make even the most mundane tech issue sound like a heroic epic had inspired legions of former office workers to pursue their dreams, no matter how obscure or impractical. The victory had ripple effects beyond Earth's atmosphere, as neighboring star systems took note of humanity's tenacity and sense of humor. The Galactic Federation, previously wary of Earthlings due to our penchant for creating overly complex coffee orders, now sought alliance. They were particularly interested in our recipes for fusion cuisine, having never before considered the prospect of combining peanut butter with anything other than outright confusion. In the heart of New York, at the grand reopening of Central Park, now featuring a roller coaster section to boost morale, a gathering of all involved parties took place. Loretta, Charlie, Zogther, and a delegation of the Scree, along with Ted and representatives from various communities, stood on a makeshift stage constructed from repurposed alien technology. The crowd, a mosaic of species and cultures, buzzed with anticipation. Loretta stepped forward, adjusting her reading glasses with a flourish. "Thank you all for being here. As you know, we stand on the brink of a new era, one where humans, aliens, and even very persistent squirrels can coexist and thrive. Today, we celebrate not just our victory, but the start of a new chapter." The crowd erupted into applause, a cacophony of claps, screeches, and whatever sound the Scree made, which was somewhere between a chirp and a kazoo. Charlie took the mic next, his voice booming with the authority of someone who had once overcharged for a toilet installation. "It's been a heck of a ride, folks. We've got new infrastructure, new friends, and the world's most energy-efficient disco ball. Let's keep shaking things up." Zogther, with his usual stoic demeanor, added, "In my world, we measure success in forms filled and regulations upheld. Here, I have learned that success is measured in kindness, perseverance, and the number of dance-offs won. I am grateful to have found a place among you." The Scree delegation, led by a particularly enthusiastic member named Chitter, concluded with a rousing symphony of squirrel sounds. Though incomprehensible to most, their excitement was infectious. Ted, ever the accidental hero, wrapped up the speeches. "Remember, folks, life is like a malfunctioning printer. Sometimes it spits out gibberish, but with a little patience and a lot of shaking, you can make it print something beautiful." As the crowd laughed and cheered, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Music filled the air, a fusion of human melodies and alien rhythms that defied genre but felt right. People danced, chatted, and shared stories of survival and hope. In this moment, as the lights of the solar-powered disco ball reflected off the rebuilt skyline, humanity's victory was clear. Not only had we defeated an enemy, but we had risen above what had once seemed insurmountable. Together, with our new allies and a renewed spirit, we had forged a path forward. As the night wore on, and the stars blinked into view, Loretta glanced at her companions. "We're going to be okay," she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. "Better than okay," Charlie replied, adjusting his tool belt. "We're going to be unstoppable." Zogther nodded, a rare smile playing on his alien features. "Indeed, humans have a way of defying expectations." Chitter, perched happily on Ted's shoulder, offered a chirp of agreement, a sound that somehow resembled applause. And so, with laughter, ingenuity, and that indomitable human spirit, the world turned. The days of desperation and division were behind them, and ahead lay a future bright with possibility. Humanity had not only survived, it had thrived, creating a world where hope, humor, and harmony reigned supreme. As the night wore on, with Earth now a beacon of resilience for the galaxy, one thing was certain. Humanity had won the day, not just with their strength or resolve, but with their heart. And that, in the end, was what truly made us victorious.